From the flight deck of the astral plane, this is your captain, Starpilot33, checking in with flight log number 8. It's pretty amazing we're up to 8 flight logs already, isn't it? I'm really glad 434 convinced me to do this, because along with getting to talk to so many of you about your own experiences and meet others in the psychedelic community, these flight logs have helped me to remember these trips in clear detail that I would have surely lost if I hadn't written them down the morning after. I only wish that I had thought to do this from the beginning 10 years ago. As it is, I only started writing and recording my adventures 2 years ago, and while I remember some highlights of those early trips, I wish I had all of them in flight logs like I'm doing now. Some of you noticed that I hadn't made a video in a while, and yes, I was overdue for a trip. I really wanted to try to trip on or near the 10th anniversary of my first trip, which was July 16th, 2011, but that wasn't meant to be this year. August was a mess in every way, to the point where this trip almost didn't happen at all, because I was in such a mental state from all that had transpired. Without getting into too much of the details, I'll just say this past month involved multiple family members being sick and or in the hospital, friends losing loved ones, pets and animals being sick, or needing to go to the emergency vet, or animals dying, being without my car on and off for 5 weeks as they try to fix a mysterious problem, and finally, having to say goodbye to my horse, who's been a very dear friend, partner, and companion for many years. All of this made the month of August pretty distraught, distressful, and depressing. And it wasn't that I wasn't worried about the mushrooms giving me a hard time, it was that I didn't trust my own mindset to be able to handle the experience. I've had rough trips, but never one that was bad to the point of never wanting to trip again, and I take each trip very seriously and take every precaution so I can avoid that scenario. Even up until Friday, I didn't feel anywhere near ready. Honestly, I'd done very little to prep mentally or physically, but something said it was time anyway, because of what was going to happen this week and having to say goodbye to my horse. The approach of that day has been heavy on my mind, and I know my guide, Asim, said the last time that just because some things were ending doesn't mean it's the end of everything, and that when things leave, it's to make room for more to come, but still, it hurts. Saturday, I actually had a good day, free of emergencies and panic for once. I slept in ridiculously late, then had a slow day, drawing, taking a nap, and just going out for my daily chores at the farm to take care of my horse. I don't think I've ever mentioned her before, but I've had a horse for 10 years. She was a special horse who was neglected, but had a lot of talent and just needed some training and encouragement. We had amazing adventures together, and she proved herself to be the bravest there is. But something was always there in the background that wasn't right about her, and nobody could figure out what it was. She seemed happy and healthy, but there were little clues along the way that something just wasn't right. In March, we had an accident where she suddenly collapsed after landing from a jump. I got knocked out and realized that something was really wrong with her. We discovered through a series of neurological and physical tests that there was something wrong in her neck. X-rays revealed advanced osteoarthritis at the base of her neck, and it could be impinging on nerves that controlled her front legs, and that may have caused her to fall. The vet said her jumping days were over, and she could only safely do walk-trot with a rider from now on. But on her own, she was so happy to run and even jump some of the jumps in the field without a rider on her because she loves jumping so much. I know she doesn't understand why we don't fly together anymore, and I can't explain to her what happened and why. I never planned to say goodbye to her except at the end of her life. So this has been an unexpected and incredibly hard sequence of emotions that are going through all the 5 stages of grief with me. I found a great home for her with grassy pastures where she can be a horse and not worry about competitions and training. She can relax with a few companions and enjoy milder temperatures, better grass, quieter life, and I think it'll help her condition so that the remainder of her life is happy. She isn't old at all. She's in the prime of her life, which makes it even sadder. I expected to have another 10 years with her, but it just doesn't feel right to keep her in this place doing limited things and trying to keep her mind occupied without being able to do much. She broke out of her stall twice in a week, and that's when I knew that I couldn't keep her like this, unable to ride her and get all the energy out that she had bottled up. So this coming Friday, she'll leave and go to her new home, which is an 11-hour drive away. So that was the backstory and the basis of this trip. I needed answers, but also healing and encouragement because of all that happened and because of all that was going to happen. I needed my emotions hard reset and put back into check because lately I've been a complete train wreck with everything going on. Earlier in the week, I was in the feed room getting my horse's hay and grain for dinner when I thought I heard my guide Asim say, "What comes before the dawn?" I thought a minute and answered, "The darkest night," to which he said, "What else?" I don't know what else. I thought about it all week and couldn't figure out what he meant. On the way home from the farm, I found a long white feather in the middle of the driveway, clearly from the white peacock that lives on the property nearby. I took it with me and put it on my table of special objects, which I set up like a mesa before an ayahuasca ceremony. Somehow it felt important that it appeared in my path that day when I was going to journey that evening. So I had all this in mind when I decided it was time to trip. I had a fresh indoor batch, and it would be a shame to waste the opportunity to do them fresh. The one I picked was a weird mutation. 2 mushrooms conjoined at the caps and stems, with a little smaller one growing between them. It weighed out to 34.6 grams initially, and after being in the refrigerator a few days in a plastic bin on a paper towel, the weight was down to 29.8 grams, which is roughly 3 grams dried. So I felt like I needed a little bit more, but in hindsight, I probably should have just done them as is. But I had a tiny packet of 0.8 grams of outside grown and dried ones from last time that the outside patch made some shrooms. So I rehydrated those in some water and was shocked and a little bit scared how blue the water got with just a few crumbs in it. The last time I tripped on the outdoor grown ones, if you recall, I said that the images and visuals were very organic, natural, and indigenous in shape and pattern, and that the colors were more earth tones with bronze, pearl, white, and iridescent colors as opposed to the usual sharp angles, mechanical structures, and machine-like visions from the indoor grown dried ones. This would be an interesting experiment to see how the fresh indoor ones compared to the fresh outdoor, and how the dried outdoor ones were different from fresh outdoor ones. I know in a real experiment you should only test one variable at a time, but I had to go with what I had. So I cooked them up with the same recipe as before, with garlic, sweet onion, tomatoes, brown rice, and quinoa, and I poured the little bowl of scary blue juice and rehydrated shroom bits over the top. If there was a reason to regret on this trip, I'm betting it was that bowl of blue rocket fuel. I'm not sure about the weight calculation either, since that fresh one was 34.6 grams down to 29.8, so do I use the original weight or the weight after it lost a little water? So the final dose was somewhere between 34.6 wet, which is 3.46 dried, and 29.8 grams, or 2.98 dried, plus the 0.8 packet. So altogether it was somewhere between 4.26 grams and 3.78 grams if this was a dry dose. In hindsight, that was really crappy science. This trip was a lot more intense than the last one. Maybe I felt like I needed a hard slap and a reset to break out of the awful pit that I was in. So the day was thankfully quiet and emergency-free. I had a lot of apprehension as always, but tried to keep my thoughts from turning to reasons not to trip. The fact was, it was a perfect evening. I'd rested a few days, and even if I wasn't completely prepped like I thought I should be, I had off from work on Monday, so that was even better. So I lit some sage, walked through the house, did my usual cleansing ritual, put my special items on the counter, including 2 clippings from my horse's tail that I saved from whenever I trim it so she doesn't step on it, and of course the feather that I found earlier that day. Around 6 p.m. I ate the cooked meal, and before eating I said my intentions for the trip. Basically, I needed help, guidance, and healing after all that had happened recently. And I needed to be dug out of the ditch and put back on the rails again. Once again, cooking them this way was so good. So good, in fact, I think I made a little bit too much in quantity. That's the downside to making shrooms taste great, is you want to eat more of them. I couldn't even taste the rehydrated ones at all. The tomato and garlic flavors were enough to mask any bitter taste. At first, I felt nothing, and I wondered if this was going to work. Maybe 6 days in the fridge was too long and the fresh ones had lost potency. 15 minutes later, I was signing off and saying adios to a friend I was talking to, saying, "It's coming on fast, I gotta go." And it came on very fast. It pulled me under almost immediately. This time I was reclining but not lying down like before. No heartburn this time. I went deep under, and the words "powerful" kept running through my mind. The mushrooms themselves were telling me how powerful they were. Note to self, when a mushroom you've just eaten proceeds to tell you in the first 15 minutes how powerful it is, you can expect a seriously wild night. Yes, they were fresh and first flush, so they were pretty strong. And then there were the scary blue mutants mixed with the even scarier outside-grown rehydrated ones that leached so much blue into that bowl. Yeah, I know I was in for it. I think part of my hesitation in tripping is knowing that most of this I'm actually doing to myself, and they're just giving me exactly what I'm asking for. These mushrooms were incredibly powerful, in fact, and I would not recommend doing this for anyone unless they had a lot of experience and were skilled at being okay with whatever happens in the middle of a psychedelic tornado. If you're someone who knows what I mean by that, then maybe you might get something beneficial out of an experience like this once you got to the other side of the peak anyway. The come up and peak for this trip was a no-kidding total of 4 hours. That's a long climb to cruising altitude, and it was a hell of a bumpy ride to get there. As the trip came on, like always, there were a few introductory excursions with my eyes closed below the surface where I saw alien geometry that was much like the organic geometry of the last trip. Aztec and Egyptian patterns and symbols were woven into moving tubes that looked like intestines. The symbols were embedded into this living, moving set of interlocking tubes and backlit with changing rainbow-colored lights. There were sounds or frequencies like voices humming or chanting on a single frequency note. There were creatures who approached and looked at me curiously. They were like beige, tan-colored sea creatures with tentacle faces like Zoidberg from Futurama. They got a little bit in my face, but I knew they didn't have any ill intent. They told me their name and asked my name. I told them and they said, "That's not your real name. That's just the one you use in life, Starpilot." I'd heard about this real name thing before on an earlier trip too. I've yet to figure it all out though. I told them, Amia's my guide, and they seemed surprised and backed off a step. "Oh really?" one said, changing the vibe to a more friendly one. "Well then, tell him we said hello." Then they went on their way with this warm feeling suddenly everywhere. I opened my eyes. Ami was there in the energy in the corner, though it was barely dark enough to see the green light. "Are you really there?" I asked. "Are you really real?" "I wish you'd stop asking that after all this time. It hurts my feelings," he said. I'm sorry, I apologized. "I know I always seem to go there. I won't doubt you again. I'm glad you decided to come tonight," he said. I almost didn't. This was a crapshoot after this last month. I know I'm not in the best place mentally to be doing this. Sounds like you sure get around, though. All I said to them was that you were my guide, and those guys changed their stance immediately. Friends in high places, I guess. "My reputation precedes me, apparently," Ami said. "I have a lot to ask you about, especially about my horse," I said. But I could barely keep my eyes open. At this point, the pull was so strong. I didn't even hear his answer, and I was back under again. There were spaceships, beautiful ones, made of white geometric panels and black, ebony-like trim, and rainbow lights tracing all the panels. I approached one of them and got the sense that it was nervous. "Are you okay?" I said. "I'm new at this. I've never done this before or had a pilot," it said. "Oh, I see. So you've never really traveled then?" "Never had an opportunity." "Well, you're gonna love this. Okay, so I need to see the cockpit or the control room or wherever your heart is." It brought me through itself, and there was a pearl white room that I could tell had control consoles, but they were unlike anything we have here in our universe. The pearl white that everything was made from seemed subtly infused with rainbow colors. "Okay, so here's how it works," I said. I plugged in with the same connection in my arm that was installed on a trip long ago, and it was like connecting a cable directly to the mind of the ship. "Wow," it said, "the power is amazing. You want to see what it can do?" I said. "Let's go then." And away we went. It was traveling through time and space, passing dimensions like going under bridges on a highway. "I love this. This is so amazing," the ship said. I got the feeling it was a young one. It felt like it had the wonder and enthusiasm of a teenage student. We went on and on for a while, and I don't remember exactly how it ended, but I remember feeling the gratitude for the flying lesson and like the ship had discovered for the first time something amazing about itself. All the hesitation and fear dissolved into the exhilaration and sheer fun of the flight. I opened my eyes. That was pretty cool, getting to teach that ship how to fly with a pilot. "You changed its life, I think," Ami said. "Now it knows something about itself that it never knew before. Your teaching experience made that possible." I noticed that it seemed like Ami was talking really fast, and that these experiences were happening in rapid-fire succession also. "Are you talking faster than normal, or am I processing all this faster than normal?" I felt my neck for my heartbeat and noticed its rhythm was fast, but I had no sensation of it being fast. "Go back again," he said, "and remember to breathe." So I went back and took a deep breath, noticing it did help things to slow down a bit. I was surrounded again by native elders from many tribes. I knew that they were there to talk to me about my horse. I explained the situation with her and told them that I loved her so much and I didn't want to let her go, but I felt like it wasn't right to keep her in this situation with so many years left ahead of her. They said, sometimes the right thing to do is the hardest thing to do. Letting her go is the right thing, and the fact that I felt this in my heart when I understood the problem is because my heart is joined with the spirit of all those who have loved a horse and had to let them go. They said that every brave warrior who's ever cried tears of loss after letting their horse go to the next world, or just to be free on the wind, has felt what I feel right now. They told me that, like they said before, horses are made from the four winds. They said she came to me on the wind, and now I must send her with the wind again. To try to hold on to the wind when its time has come to let it go only makes it wither and die, but setting it free allows its energy to continue so it can come back to you again. They said by letting her go, I'm letting her be free to return again, and she will come back someday. I asked, but what happens now? She's been part of my life for so long. It's like losing a huge piece of my life and my heart. I can't just go find another horse. No, you can't, they said. She's special, just like all the horses that you've had, and you'll never find another like her. Stand with your arms wide into the wind and be open to receive, and maybe another horse will come to you on the wind. It's just that I love her so much, I said. Tell her that now, they said. I saw her in her stall with her head down, half asleep, eyes half open. I could feel her at peace, just relaxing, and I sent her love from my heart. She knows you love her. She knows something happened. And she doesn't understand what, but she knows that she's leaving soon. How does she know? I asked. She knows its time in your stewardship of her has reached an end, and she has to go to the next place where she'll affect the life of someone else in a different way. You're allowing her the freedom to do this by sending her with the wind. I could see the tears in the eyes of some of the younger-looking native spirits, and I knew that they understood what I was feeling, and they'd all felt it too. To say that I was bawling my eyes out would be an understatement. Crying to the point of choking and drowning in tears was more like it, and inhaling tears is what woke me up. You're doing the right thing, Ami said. I know it's against every plan you had and everything you thought would happen, but the decision that you're making so quickly after knowing the situation and not letting the wind fade will help to keep her going. And she will come back to you, I promise. The torrent of emotions hitting me was coinciding with one of the most intense parts of the trip. It felt like something cataclysmic was coming, and the intensity was building exponentially with each passing moment. I looked at the wall and the green light where Ami was, and everything was shaking like an earthquake. Hold on, Ami said. Stay with it. Then I closed my eyes and was in a spaceship going through some kind of a terrible storm. We were flipped upside down and rocked to the point where I couldn't tell which way was up or down, forward or backward. It sounded like engines were screaming and spooling faster and faster, and then it was like the spaceship exploded, disintegrating after flying through a supernatural tornado. I was getting pelted with stuff, and I could actually feel it, like pebbles and wood, and there was a shrieking sound just before a complete dissolution of everything. Hold on and stay with me. I could barely hear Ami. You're so close to breaking through this. Then I saw what could only be described as some alien race, with long faces and heads that had a point at the top. They had wide, spaced, dark eyes with long, droopy mouths, almost like a duck, but it was soft, not hard like a beak. They stood upright and were outlined in orange and green lights. You want to know how long the dialogue between us has been going on? They said. I was in a vast, low-ceilinged control room now, with a view of the stars outside through these rounded-edged square windows. There were rows of beige consoles and seats, and the consoles themselves were black and curved, just like the ceiling panels. So black and beige were the colors everywhere in this geometric room, and there were people sitting at all the controls doing something. Here, one of them said, looking up. Here's a transcript from the last 5 bazillion years of communications. And they sent this tidal wave of information at me that was like listening to billions of conversations, phone calls, text messages, letters, emails, cave paintings, ancient symbols, all at once. I remember they said the number 5, but what version of million, billion, trillion, quadrillion, or whatever was after that, I didn't catch it. I literally saw the number 5, and then I was hit with zeros like a train running over me. All the information sent the CPU in my head into a meltdown, like it was frying with the volume of data coming in. Right as I was blown back into the tornado, I heard them say, "Welcome to the group chat that's been going on forever." I woke up briefly and was about to laugh about the group chat comment when suddenly I was hit with a dark wave of wanting this to be over and feeling out of control. I was literally on the edge of what I could hang on to at this point. My mind over matter skills were blown to shit by now, and I glanced at the towel on the floor, my emergency landing spot in case I got sick again. I leaned back and put my arm over the couch like the dude from The Big Lebowski and took a deep breath. Yeah, and then there's this part of the trip, I said. trying to be cool through it and just ride it out, but I was sweating it at this point. My body was fiery hot. Ami said if I wanted this part over quickly, I should just lean over and get it over with. I didn't actually feel nauseous, but I felt like I'd feel a lot better if I just stopped resisting whatever tension I was holding inside. So I decided to just let it go, like Elsa in Frozen. It was a minor incident. I didn't drink any water with dinner like last time, and immediately I felt better. I noticed that on trips where I forced myself not to puke, I always got bad stomach aches later and cramps that often lasted for the rest of the trip. While puking is no fun, it sure gets you over that phase quickly. I've been puking at the peak so often now that I think if I climbed Mount Everest, I'd probably plant the flag and puke. Why does this happen all the time now? I asked Emmy. It's actually not unusual when you take powerful ones like that, and in that quantity, he said. It happens on peyote, mescaline, ayahuasca, mushrooms. It's just part of what can happen. For you, it's because you have some seriously powerful mushrooms, but don't worry, you're not getting out of this trip. You've already absorbed all you need for 8 full hours. That's good to know, I said, because I don't like wasting any. You're not wasting any. Wasting would have been not eating them at all while they're still fresh. As I said before, the come up and peak portion of this trip from the time it started hitting my system until I puked over the peak and reached cruising altitude was a full 4 hours. We started at 6:15 p.m., and that first part where I felt like I got pressure washed of all the filthy crap I brought with me and spanked for being a turd about it all ended about 10 p.m. But before it finally calmed down, I still felt like I was spinning in the tornado. But the feeling of wanting the trip to end and all those things you really don't want to think about, all that just vanished. By this time, the couch was a disaster. The room in general was a war zone. Pillows were everywhere, coffee table crooked, bottles of empty water on the floor, blankets strewn everywhere, and debris, sand or something, I kept brushing off the couch, and I have no clue what it was. I can't believe the amount of debris with this storm, I said to Ami. You know, like when people see a tornado, the first thing they say is, debris, I see debris. Like, yep, that's what tornadoes do. In the morning, it was still there, and it looked like strange grains of something, but not sand or kitty litter or anything else obvious. It was bizarre. It was like the same thing that I'd swept from the bed on previous trips, involving psychedelic tornadoes, whirlpools, black entropy holes, or chaos maelstroms. Right in the boundary between chaos and peace. Ami said something about the lyrics to a song I'd heard earlier in the week. It was a song I'd never really paid any attention to the lyrics to before, other than the chorus. You want me to look the lyrics up right now? I said. I was still reeling from everything. I was struggling to turn my phone on, which was not accepting my fingerprint ID or my passcode. Phones just don't work right when you're tripping, I noticed. With much effort, I Googled the lyrics to Don't Let the Sun Go Down on Me. I'd heard the Elton John and George Michael duet version earlier in the week, and I started to read the lyrics, which I'd never really understood before in the song. And I could hardly make it out at first because it was hard to read, even with the screen on the dimmest setting. I realized that while the lyrics meant something totally different in the context of the song, Ami was using them to tell me something about himself right in the middle of a literal psychedelic shitstorm of chaos. I choked up, and the wave of emotion somehow pulled me from the sickening feeling of being out of control and regrounded me on the couch. The worst was over. Co-pilot Cat, all the cats really, were hiding somewhere for the first 4 hours of this and gradually came out as time went on. Co-pilot Cat felt like he needed to love on me and give lots of kisses on my face. He gets so affectionate when it's trip time. He was nervous at points too, though, wanting to go outside when the neighbor's orange cat showed up on the other side of the patio screen, and also he had a massive case of the trip munchies. He kept wanting snacks like I've never seen him crave in the evening. I wasn't hungry at all in the slightest, but he sure was. He was being a pain in the ass, co-pilot, at points, meowing and being restless when I was just slipping below the surface of another closed-eye excursion. I opened my eyes and looked at him. What? Are you okay? Bored? Come help then. You can't possibly be hungry again. Run a checklist or something and help out. I think we have the ship put back together again after all that. I looked at my phone. It was around 10 p.m. I'd made it through that crazy come-up and peak, but I knew it wasn't over yet. During the intermission with Ami, I talked to him about a lot of things, like everyone being sick last month. He said, repeat after me. They are okay. So I repeated it. That's all you need to focus on now, not the scary stuff of what happened. The important part is they are okay now. Why does all this bad stuff keep happening like a tsunami of nonstop shit? I asked. This is an accelerated time. where many events seem compressed into a shorter period, and it feels like there's no rest between them. But part of it is because the energy you're sending out is attracting energy you don't want, and you've got to work on that. You can't prevent things from happening, but you can prevent making it worse than it needs to be. What comes before the dawn? I asked him. You asked me that, and I said the darkest night, like from my book, but what else do you mean? Ami said, darkness and night are not the same thing. The night can be inherently dark in that there are smaller stars to light the sky than the big one during the day, but it's not dark in an evil way. The energy of the night is the energy of rest, rejuvenation, transformation, and metamorphosis. We sleep at night and crawl into our beds into a retreat of healing for the mind and rest for the body. You thought of the analogy earlier in the week about a caterpillar that goes into a cocoon, and in that night of transformation becomes something new. These times that you're living in are like a vast night for human consciousness. This is a time of metamorphosis, and it's often painful, especially when you don't understand what it all means or what will happen to you. To resist is to miss the benefit the night has to offer in rest and healing. What comes before dawn is a night that is not your enemy. It's there to heal you and transform you for the new day coming. Through the conversation was that same low, resonant humming that I heard before that was coming outside, and it was explained to me before that that was the sound of the residents of the earth itself. It was a low, rumbling hum, like a huge generator was running far in the distance, but I could hear it clearly in the background any time I was awake, and it was gone any time that I was under or wherever I was traveling at the time. Ami said that there's actually very little between where he is and where I am. But the veil is very hard to cross, as I saw earlier. He said everyone eventually goes, and if they've lived a long life, they seem to know deep inside when the time is coming, even if it's several years in the future. I thought about my dad. I looked at my phone and I saw his nightly text message, night night, to which I always answer back, nighty night night. We've been doing this for over 15 years now. I asked Emmy if he would take care of my dad when it was time, and he promised he would. He also said there was no way my dad could ever understand or appreciate that all I've done on my adventures on the other side if I tried to explain it to him now, but someday he would understand, and he'd be amazed and proud of my interdimensional explorations. I started to get sleepy, but I didn't want to go to bed again. I wanted to stay on the couch with Ami there. I told him that too. I was so thankful for his help and sorry that I showed up like a kid covered in mud and crap that needed to be hosed off outside before being allowed in the house. I was restless on the couch, feeling like I was drowning in blankets and pillows. I hit my elbow on the coffee table and saw a white flower of life circles from the pain. Pain when tripping is a really odd sensation for sure, and couldn't find the specific pillow that I wanted in the mess, or my chapstick, and my clothes all felt tangled around me. I'm totally failing in situational awareness and cockpit organization here tonight, I said. Then I realized that I was thirsty and out of water too. Carefully, I stumbled to the bedroom where I had 2 more bottles and got one of them, then returned to the couch. Co-pilot Cat decided to be a turd and try to hump the blanket my legs were under at one point. Cats act really weird when you're tripping. He was all amped up for some reason this night, not sleeping through the whole night like last time. I chased him off and he jumped on the coffee table, which I pulled over so it was right next to me. Another cat decided to go try to nurse on the blanket like a kitten, and I've never seen him do that before either. Co-pilot Cat finally fell asleep with his paw in my hand, and for a brief time we traveled together, in the patterns and tubes of mechanical structures and the humming, chattering voices, as the entities there told me secrets that I can't even remember now. I was just in awe of the beauty of it, and I could stare at those complex geometric morphing machines all day. I came back after a bit, and Ami was still there, quietly in the corner. I heard a dog barking across the street over the fence. It was rhythmic the way he barked and paused, and I noticed a pattern to it, like long and short barks in a pattern like a Morse code. I got a pen and paper and tried my best to write in the dark, dashes and dots, when the long and short barks were. One time he barked the exact pattern twice, and there was a pause between the last bark. It's like Morse code, I said to Ami. It is, only it doesn't translate into our letters, but there is a pattern. He's sending a message. You can't hear it in here, but there's another dog answering back. I listened for a while, but my brain was exhausted. Too exhausted to contemplate the mysteries of dog barking decoded. I was fading again. I thanked Ami for everything and told him I loved him. I love you too, Starpilot, he said, as I drifted off, back into the fabric of the other side. I never got to say goodbye to him this time, but I was glad at least I remembered to say thank you. I woke up around 1:30 a.m. and he was gone. It's amazing how different the feeling in the room is when he's here and when he's not. There's no doubt of the difference. I still felt like I was coming down and not totally landed, but it was time for bed. I got ready for bed and looked in the mirror. Seeing my face wasn't morphing at all, but my pupils were still just a little larger than normal. Co-pilot Kat and the others followed me into the bedroom, and I don't even remember closing my eyes. I was just so wiped out. I was still having trip-like dreams throughout the night, and I sweated quite a bit too, despite the temperature being cool in the room. It's become a ritual now to get up in the morning, it was 11:30 a.m. this time, rip all the sheets off the bed, send them immediately to the wash, get in the shower, and wash the remnants of the battle off my body and the sweat out of my hair. I was struggling in the morning, feeling like I was going to pass out and needing to lie down every few minutes. I was glad to finally be on the couch eating some breakfast. It was hard to get up without feeling lightheaded, so I limited any cleaning activities to only the most critical for the time being. The couch was a mess, and there was stuff strewn everywhere. I spent the next few hours just starting to write this before it all faded in the daylight. I went out to the farm, feeling a little stronger after a few hours, did all my chores, trying to be mindful of each task, preparing my horse's food, cleaning her stall, giving her a bath, treating her skin that doesn't like the heat of the summer. I gave her peppermints and sat with her, just hoping that she knew how much I love her and how much I'm going to miss her. This is going to be a very hard week, but I'm glad I went through this rough night of sandblasting and restoration to prepare me to do the hardest thing, which is the right thing to do, and send her with the wind so that she can return to me one day. Thank you for coming with me on this journey. I look forward to all your comments, emails, and DMs. You can email me at starpilot33@protonmail.com or find me on Instagram at starpilot33. Until next time, fly safe, keep your wings level and your eyes on the horizon, stay healthy, be good to yourself, and I'll see you on the other side.